The early history of the Highlands and Highland clans, like that of most other races of men, is involved in great obscurity. They are generally believed to be of Celtic origin, and to have formed part of the great family of Celts and Cimbri who peopled Spain, France, and Britain. They are further said, according to one tradition, to be descended from the Picts, according to another, from the Scots, the most ancient inhabitants of Scotland of which we have any certain account. That which assigns to them a Pictish origin seems to be the better supported. Mr. Skene, who is an authority on the subject, is of opinion that the modern Highlanders are the same people with those who inhabited the Highlands of Scotland in the 9th and 10th centuries, and that these inhabitants were not Scots, as has been generally supposed, but the descendants of the great northern division of the Pictish nation, who were altogether unaffected by the Scottish conquest of the Lowlanders in 843, and who in a great measure maintained the independence of the kings of that race. He also asserts that these northern Picts formed part of the great family of Caledonians, the most ancient inhabitants of the country, that they spoke the same language, and bore the same national appellation with the present Highlanders. Originally occupying the plains, they were gradually driven to seek refuge, by the force of invasion, in the mountains and fastnesses of their native land. The division of the people into clans or societies resembled in some respects that of most other root tribes, banded together under one common leader or chief, for the purposes of mutual defense against their more powerful enemies, as well as for maintaining their independence. But in the relations which subsisted between the members of a clan and its chief, and the various laws by which they were governed, they were totally different from all other communities of a similar kind. The system of government amongst them was that which has been denominated patriarchal, and which was peculiar to the Celtic race in general. The position of the chief or head of a clan was strictly hereditary, and resembled that of a petty monarch. He held absolute power over those of his clan, exercising the authority and discharging the functions of a landlord, military leader, and judge, his clansmen in their turn being bound to render him implicit obedience, and to defend his cause, be it right or wrong. The mutual relations which existed between the clan and its chief, of authority and protection on the one hand, and of obedience and devotion on the other, were the result not so much of superior possessions and influence on the part of the chief, as of a hereditary right, arising out of a supposed consanguinity or blood relationship by which they were cemented together as members of the same family, and consequently, the devotion and attachment of those of the same clan to their chief was paramount to every other consideration, and there are many instances on record of heroic self-sacrifice on the part of the adherents of the chief. Rather than betray their fidelity to his cause, they were no less devoted to one another as members of the same clan, and bound to protect each other, and to uphold whatever they conceived to be for the honor of the clan. It is further to be noted that whilst the authority vested in the chief belonged to him in virtue of his hereditary right, independent of any other consideration, he was generally likewise distinguished by his superior possessions and property, being entitled to receive a certain amount of tribute from the members of his clan in virtue of his office as chief. The laws pertaining to succession, property, and marriage were likewise peculiar. The right of chieftainship was vested in the males alone, and a brother was considered a degree nearer of kin than a son, an arrangement which was no doubt the result of the importance which was attached to strict hereditary succession. With regard to property, the lands of the chief were divided in certain proportions amongst the male members of the family, whilst the principal seat of the family always remained the property of the chief. With regard to the law of marriage, it was the custom for the heir of one chief to live with the daughter of another as her husband for 12 months and a day, if in that time the lady should prove to be a mother. The marriage was confirmed by law without any further ceremony, but if, on the contrary, there was no issue, the contracting parties were considered free, and at liberty to marry again. This custom was called handfasting. In addition to the qualifications already mentioned as requisite in a chief, not the least important was his distinction for bravery, military achievement, and zeal for the honor of his clan. Accordingly, his heir and successor was required to prove himself worthy of the post by deeds of valor, and so likewise the members composing the clan. The reader will be able to form some idea from the foregoing account of the origin, nature, and constitution of the Highland clans, and whilst the result of such a system was, amongst other things, to foster in the hearts of a brave and hardy people false notions of right and wrong, a spirit of lawlessness and a reckless disregard of human life, it also engendered feelings of independence, of hospitality, of fidelity, of devotion, and attachment rarely to be met with in other forms of society, and as an institution it has done more to mould the character and form the habits and customs of the people of Scotland than any other influence whatever. Before giving a short account of each clan, with a specimen of its distinguishing tartan, some notice of the Highland dress will be interesting to the reader. The origin of the tartan and of the Highland dress, according to the most authentic accounts, dates from the 15th century, in the reign of James III. It was at first rude in texture and scanty in appearance. The earliest account given of the Highland portion of the Scottish army describes them as going almost naked, having painted waistcoats, and a sort of woolen covering, variously coloured. The braken, failer, i.e. the checkered covering, is the original garb of the Highlanders, and forms the chief part of the costume. It consists of a plain piece of tartan from 4 to 6 yards in length, and 2 yards broad. The plaid surrounded the waist in great plaits or folds, and was firmly bound with a leathern belt, so that the lower side fell down to the middle of the knee joint. The upper part was fastened on the left shoulder with a large brooch or pin, that on the right side, which was the longest, was tacked under the belt. A purse called sporran was tied in front, made of goat's or badger skin, or sometimes of plain leather. This was divided into several compartments, one for holding a watch, another money, etc. Originally the Highlanders for the most part went barefooted, sometimes they fitted to their feet a piece of untanned hide. The use of stockings is of comparatively recent date. They were originally of the same pattern as the plaid, and cut out of the web. The garters were of rich colours, and broad. The bonnet, which was of various patterns, completed the national garb, and in addition to the broadsword, those who could afford it carried a dirk, along with a knife and fork, stuck in the sheath, and sometimes a spoon, together with a pair of steel pistols worn in the waist-belt. The women's dress resembled in many respects that of the men. It need only be added that the Highland dress, which was formerly a national costume, is now chiefly confined to the Highland regiments, or worn by others as an occasional or fancy dress.